Good evening and welcome. I'm Chris Barnell.
Reporting from Moscow.
Tbilisi.
Times Square.
May your dreams be your only boundaries in life.
Hello, and welcome to Tennessee Talks. I'm your host, Ruth Dunning. Each month on Tennessee Talks, we introduce you to political leaders from around the area and discuss local politics and issues. This week, we're proud to talk to one of Shelby County's leaders in juvenile justice, Judge of the Shelby County Juvenile Court, Dan H. Michael. Judge Michael is newly elected to the chief position, but is not new to the justice system. Judge Michael has worked for the juvenile court for many years as a magistrate, overseeing many cases involving our city and county's youth. We are pleased to have him here today. Welcome, Judge Michael.
Thank you.
We're delighted you're here.
Thank you.
A couple of things first. Explain the hierarchy of magistrate and then judge.
Okay. Judges are elected by the people in the lower courts, juvenile courts, probate courts, circuit chancery courts, criminal courts. Mm-hmm. They are appointed by the governor in the higher appellate courts, all the way up to the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And then they run for retention, those appellate judges do.
And we just had an amendment
dealing with that. That's right,
Mm-hmm.
to straighten that out. Magistrate judges are appointed judges by a sitting judge.
By an elected judge.
By an elected judge.
Okay.
The reason magistrate judges exist is purely because of volume. Uh-huh. We clear close to 70,000 cases at juvenile court every year in all the areas that we have jurisdiction over. A single judge could not do that alone.
Right. How many magistrates are there?
I have 10.
My heavens.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We have 4 magistrates who only do child support hearings, and then 6 magistrates who are juvenile magistrates who do everything. Mm-hmm. And those 10 are on the bench all day, every day during the week. We're running dockets constantly to handle all the caseload. Without them, I couldn't get anything done.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, tell us about you. You're a homegrown protege here.
I am. Born and raised here in Memphis and Shelby County.
Mm-hmm.
Went to school actually here at Germantown Elementary for a while. Grew up through city junior high and went to a private high school. Mm-hmm. Did my bachelor's degree at the University of Memphis. Mm-hmm. Was in a master's program when I applied to law school and got accepted. And during those years, I was in a family-run business. We were in the service station business. I was an ASE certified mechanic. Worked on cars.
Handy thing to be.
It is a handy thing to be, especially during that period. And that industry was changing. And when I got accepted into law school, I was almost 38, almost. And I matriculated in my 40th year and essentially left the business I was in and went straight into public service. And I've been working at the court since.
Ever since, Well, good. Now, so one of the things I want to ask you about, I'm afraid, some homegrown problems too. And we've had serious problems with youth mobs and youth violence. Speak to that for us for a moment.
The problem of youth violence is not new.
Correct.
It's interesting because we have a complete history of the docket schedules and the delinquent acts going back into the early 60s that we can probe through our technical system. And I had a reason to look back over the years back into the 60s and come forward just a few weeks ago. And it's amazing to look at the docket schedules where we had a lot of the same problems in the 60s and 70s, the distinction being they weren't as large. They weren't as immediate. We didn't show them on television. They didn't come through social media. You couldn't get it on your cell phone. Today you get an instant video on what happened.
And it's on
inflaming the
Facebook
public
and
interest. That's
YouTube
right.
and right.
So juvenile delinquency has been around a long time. The underlying issues almost always go directly back to the family.
And that's always been true?
Always been
So
true.
we haven't really done a very good job in the last 30 or 40 years in correcting that.
You're absolutely right. And I think from a perspective of a juvenile court judge, when you're dealing with the community and you're dealing with families who are in trouble, we only have limited abilities to
Correct.
change that family. And what I ask people in the community to think about is that it took us about 15 or 16 years to get to these mob actions, because that's how all those children are. They've been learning this behavior for 15 years, and then they act out. I can't just hear the case in an hour and turn back 15 years.
Right.
It's very difficult to do. And it's very difficult to change family structure.
It is. And you have talked about the idea of protecting both the juveniles, the
Right.
youth,
Right.
as well as society.
Right.
That's a tricky balance.
It is a tricky balance because in juvenile law, the only tools we have in our toolbox are tools to rehabilitate the juvenile. Now, I do have a very powerful tool if a juvenile gets too far out of line. I can transfer them to the adult system to stand trial as an adult. But if they remain in the juvenile justice system, my goal is rehabilitation. And I have to move quickly to protect the community from violent juveniles, remove them from their home, place them with the state, or put them in a program where the rehabilitation can take place before they come back. And it is a very difficult thing to do because we just don't have enough programs. That's one of the problems.
In the adult system, the
Yes.
recidivist rate is unacceptably high.
It's pretty high, yeah.
Do these rehabilitation aspects, programs, do any better for juveniles? What?
Yes. First off, you need a little science. Our brains don't mature fully until we're in our early 20s. Ladies mature quicker than guys do, okay? So you've got that on us. So you're dealing with a juvenile brain, not an adult brain. Now you're dealing with adult acts. Don't confuse the two. What the science tells us, what the evidence shows, is that a juvenile delinquent usually remains a delinquent for about 3 years. They'll act out for about 3 years, and then they grow out of the behavior if they're given the right choices in making the rehabilitation. The recidivist rates are higher than I would prefer them to be. They run between 25 and 32% for juveniles.
That's much better than for adults.
It is
though.
much better than for adults, and if you catch them younger, the rate drops. If you put them in the right programs, the rate drops. Some of the programs around town have recidivist rates as low as 4 and 6%.
Oh.
So there are programs that work much better than the general programs.
For incarcerated
Yes.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have to take a break here in just a second or two. When we come back, let's talk about what some of these programs actually are that are
Okay.
doing a good
We
job.
can do that.
Okay?
Sure can.
Good. Stay with us. We will come back with Judge Michael and continue our conversation about the juvenile court system. Thank you.
Good.
You can now watch your favorite Germantown community television shows from anywhere in the world. GHS-TV is streaming online, live 24/7. A viewing screen displays our channel just like you see on television. Simply visit our website at www.ghstv.org. So log on and enjoy hometown news from anywhere in the world, only at ghstv.org.
Every day is so wonderful, and suddenly it's hard to breathe.
Would it be okay if I sat here?
Is she serious? Whatever. New girl.
Sing away. Yes, words can't bring me down.
Reaching out. Pass it on.
So don't you bring me
A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
Welcome back to Tennessee Talks. I'm Ruth Dunning. We've been talking with Judge Dan H. Michael of the Shelby County Juvenile Court System. And we are back, and we're going to talk about some of the programs that juveniles can learn better ways in. Okay, tell us about some of them.
Well, from the earliest offenses, we have probationers who have volunteer probation officers who become mentors to these children, who go to the homes, go to the schools, make sure they're doing what they've been told to do by the court. As they move along the line as delinquents, if they keep committing delinquent acts, we gradually ramp up our involvement in that child's life.
That's what you call gradual sentencing.
Graduated sentencing, that's right. And when we get to the point where we refer a child to a program like GIF, let's say, all right.
Explain that.
Juvenile involvement with GIF is a direct one-on-one involvement with an adult mentor.
And does GIF stand for something?
It does. The Juvenile Interfaith Association, they're a nonprofit program here in town that takes children from juvenile court and tries to rehabilitate them. And they have a very low recidivist rate. They're very good at what they do. And they prove a point that I've made for years. Programs don't work. People work.
Okay.
It's not the program, it's the person in the program dealing directly with the child or family that makes the difference. So you can talk about programs all you want, but what you really need to focus on are the people there who are doing the job.
Do the people in the GIF program, do the mentors have training, et cetera? They're not just volunteers off the street.
Right. Well, they're volunteers.
But
they do have paid staff, but they also use volunteers like we do. We have our auxiliary probation officers who are probation officers are all volunteers. They're thoroughly trained by us. But these are people from the community who want to make a difference in their community. And that one-on-one relationship can be huge. You know that as a former teacher.
Yeah. Good. One of the things I found interesting about juvenile justice is that the vocabulary is very different.
It is.
Explain some of that.
It's intentional.
Okay.
When juvenile justice came into its maturity and the laws began being written, we recognized that juveniles are our future. That sounds trite.
But it's
if
true.
it is true. If we take a criminal approach to juveniles and lock them all up forever, we're not going to have a future. So the powers that be in the legislature wrote legislation with different language. We don't arrest children. We take them into custody. Okay? Children do not commit crimes. They commit delinquent acts.
Okay.
The language in the statute is very clear. In the beginning of the juvenile justice statute, it says the goal is to remove the taint of criminality from a child's actions.
Okay, so that's not just your belief, that is actually...
That is black letter law in the law books written by the legislature. And our whole focus is to use language that gives that child a chance so that when he or she is 25 or 26 and they've outgrown their behavior, and they've been rehabilitated. If someone ever asks them, have you ever been arrested? They can say no.
I was taken
into
custody.
Have you ever committed a crime? I have not, because they haven't. So their record doesn't follow them into adulthood unless it needs to.
Let's talk about some of these needs tos, because we're talking about adult crimes, and we're talking about, I would suspect, 17, 18, maybe 16, 17, 18-year-old children.
Right.
Are these children that you've had a good deal of contact with over the years? They're not just...
For the most part, most of the children who get to the point where we're considering sending them into the adult system have a long history of behavior that we have tried and been unable to correct. Primarily because of toxic situations in the home and in the community that they're subject to. It is the rare case where I will have a child come in who has committed a very heinous act like murder and who has no record. But it's not common. It's very uncommon. Most of these children have records. Yes.
What can you do with a family that you call a situation that you call toxic? If getting to the families is the most important thing. How can you help a family?
Well, first off, I can't step into that family until that child is charged and we find that child has done what he's charged with. Until then, I have no authority to step in. Once the child is proven to have committed the delinquent act, I have control over the whole family, the guardians. I can order them to do anything I need them to do to make sure the child is rehabilitated. If they do not follow my orders, then they could be subject to contempt of court. They could be subject to charges of contributing to the delinquency of a child or dependency of a child, and they could wind up in jail and have wound up in jail in the past when they've refused to cooperate.
That's getting back to incarcerating our way out of the problem a little bit.
You're absolutely right, which we cannot do. There are what we call evidence-based programs out there that we use, like multi-systemic therapy, in family settings when the families are cooperative. As a society, I've been doing this 22 years. Most of the families will cooperate and they will change.
Very few families want their children to be in trouble.
That's exactly right. But there are those parents who don't care. As a society, I think we have to make a decision at some point. We're either going to take that child under our wing, rehabilitate them, make them a productive adult, or we're going to leave them in an environment where they're not going to be, and we're going to have to deal with chaos. In my mind, my job is to identify those particular children, pull them out of the home, put them in programs where they can thrive.
As when you say, are those foster care
They could
situations?
be foster homes. They could be what we call youth development centers, which are run by the state of Tennessee for delinquent youth. But it gives me the option to step in, see the family, and go, this is not going to work at home. We're going to have to pull you out of the home, start working on mom without you there to see if we can turn her around. If not, you may not ever go back home. And that's a difficult decision to make.
It seems like as a society, we're going to have to learn how to teach parenting skills at a very young, earlier, before they end up with a 15, 12-year-old, 17-year-old problem.
Yeah, that is a serious problem. There are parenting programs out there. We have reduced the number of children being born to younger women in this county. There's a lot of good work being done, but obviously there's not enough of it being done with these families to address the very serious offenders.
Okay, we'll be right back with more from Judge Michael on Tennessee Talks. Stay with us.
Wow, college already.
Yeah. We gotta go.
I love you.
I love you too, Daddy. And thanks for everything.
Gratitude. Pass it on. A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
Welcome back to Tennessee Talks. We're still here with Judge Dan Michael talking about local issues now.
Absolutely.
And now we want to talk about some numbers. We want to talk about the numbers of juveniles and how likely any one person is to be accosted by a juvenile.
Well, the numbers tell the story. We estimate somewhere around 112,000 juveniles in Shelby County under the age of 18.
Okay.
Between the ages of about 10 and 17.
Okay.
Of that group, about 7,000 to 8,000 come in contact with our court every year, all right? But the vast majority of those never see a judge because their actions are minor. It may be a trespass or gambling or vandalism. It's things that we can handle, children who aren't dangerous to the community. When we boil the numbers down to the children that are actually posing a danger to the community, we're looking at about 400 children a year. That's all. This morning when I got to court, we had 50 children in our detention center. These children are charged with very, very serious delinquent acts: murder, kidnapping, aggravated assaults, aggravated robberies. They pose a danger to the community. It is a small, small, small percentage of juveniles when you think about 112,000 versus 400.
Yeah.
All right? So your opportunity to run into one of those 400 violent juveniles is very small. And it only happens in certain areas of the city that most folks don't frequent unless they live in those areas. You don't need to walk out your door with fear in your heart. You need to be aware of your surroundings, certainly. But the fact of the matter is, crime is down in Shelby County.
Talk to us about.
Well, over the years, we've seen our crime numbers begin to drop. We don't really know what the answers are. We know some of the programs we've used, like Blue Crush and some of the other things, that has tamped down crime, all right? A lot of the criminals are getting older and they just quit committing the acts that they commit. As a city and a county, we are very diligent in recording all of the crimes that the police investigate and that the sheriff investigates. Consequently, we take a hit as a county and city. Every year in the annual crime report, we're listed as one of the top 10 areas in the country. It's not because Chicago's safer or Nashville's safer. It's because we count everything, they don't. So they're lower in the rankings than we are, and that is a perception problem. The other problem you've got is television, radio, and social media. Everything's breaking news. You get the news instantly. And when you buy into that breaking news, I believe it creates a fear and a belief that crime is actually up when crime is actually down.
Good. What is Blue Crush?
Blue Crush is a program where, through numbers and zip codes, the police target areas where crime is flourishing. They put in more people on the street, they arrest more people for committing the acts, and they try to step down, own the acts in that particular area. It's very effective police work. And we've been using Blue Crush for a number of years, and it's been very effective for us.
How prevalent is the illegal drug business in dealing with the youth?
It's ubiquitous. Drugs and guns are everywhere in the community. Easy to get, dangerous to use, but they are everywhere. The police will tell you, especially in the urban areas, how frequently they're pulling guns off the street. And in our court, we see children every day who have been picked up for carrying guns and drugs.
Well, and we hear about kindergartners who have guns in their backpacks and things like that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, that's unfortunate, and unfortunately, a few years ago, the juvenile system here was cited nationally by
the Department of Justice, right,
as having some problems. What were those problems? And I understand now they've been addressed.
They have been addressed. When the Department of Justice came in, they came on a complaint that was filed in 2006. They came to the court almost 4 years later, and their review of the records showed problems with process, problems in how certain things were done involving due process, equal protection, and safety from harm in our detention center. We have a detention center. Now, our detention center is state-of-the-art for the 1960s. It's been around a long time, yes.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons that issue came up. The due process issue had to do with policies and procedures that were taking place in the courtroom. They weren't well defined. Equal protection came up because the vast majority of the children we deal with are African American in our community, the vast majority. So it creates a disproportionate minority contact with the court that raised the equal protection issue. What I can say is, through the diligent and hard work of the staff at juvenile court, they have done an incredible job. We are in 100% compliance with our agreement with the Department of Justice. We should be in substantial compliance within the next year and a half. And I believe the department will be gone by late 2015, mid-2016.
Well,
That's how
good.
far ahead we are.
Very good.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
between that and the fact that crime is actually down.
Yes,
Is there
yes.
anything we can do to get these guns away from youth and the drugs away, illegal drugs?
I don't have an easy answer for that problem, not in this country where Second Amendment rights are cherished. And as far as the drug issues are concerned, that has been a problem for years and years and years. I think there should be conversation at the national level on how to approach drugs and guns. At the local level, a good friend of mine who's a federal court judge and I both agree, the street will always trump the law. If a child feels like they're in danger and they have access to a weapon, they'll carry it.
Especially if the weapons are there.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly right.
Well, I don't know that you even want to comment on this, but maybe this drug problem is going to be solved somewhere like Colorado or Washington or Oregon. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know that we know.
I don't know if we
Yeah.
know. And as a judge, I have to uphold the laws in Tennessee.
As they are.
Not
Right.
Colorado. That's right.
Right.
That's
And
right.
we will end on that note.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And I want to thank those of you at home for joining us today on Tennessee Talks. If you want more information about Shelby County Juvenile Court, you can visit its webpage at www.shelbycountytn.gov. Just click on the link in the tab marked under Courts in the heading Government. And if you have any questions about this or any other show on GHS-TV, visit our website at www.ghstv.org. You can also follow the station on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time on Tennessee Talks. And we'll sit here now and